Hello, I'm Richard GIZBERT, and you're at The Listening Post. This week, the free-for-all on the American media over the so-called Ground Zero Mosque.
The infidel must be converted or killed.
The fake sheikh hits the Pakistani cricket team for 6. The viral Davids taking on corporate Goliaths.
You broke my Taylor guitar.
And Obama versus Bush.
Please, I can't compete with you.
In our web video of the week.
1 and 2 and 1 and 2.
They say you can't judge a book by its cover. The same warning could apply to journalism. You cannot judge a story by its headline. Case in point, a story that has preoccupied the American news media for weeks now, the one about what they call the Ground Zero Mosque. Even making allowances for journalistic shorthand and the oversimplification that invariably comes with that, it is a thoroughly misleading headline. First of all, it's not a mosque. It's an Islamic community center that is being proposed in Lower Manhattan, and it's not at Ground Zero, the label the U.S. media used for where the World Trade Center used to stand before September 11th, 2001. Apart from that, what's not to like about the coverage of this story? Our starting point this week is New York City and a topic that exposes just how easy it is to lay out a false narrative in the American news media when it comes to Islam. The politicians who are out to exploit that kind of narrative, and the media outlets that are willing, able, even eager to run with it.
Here in New York, a controversial decision has been made to allow a mosque to be built in the shadow of Ground Zero.
The idea gets people very excited and very polarized.
There is a fiery debate raging in Lower Manhattan.
Everybody has jumped on this story, from Associated Press to Fox to CNN.
Mosque near Ground Zero.
The Washington Post.
It has become the daily diet of conservative pundits and politicians alike.
We're establishing literally a command center for terrorism.
And that's the kind of story that the media typically likes to cover. Can be built.
Given the breathless, occasionally hysterical coverage of this story, one might have thought the American media were dealing with breaking news. But in fact, it was quite the opposite. This issue first came up 8 months ago, and most of the media ignored it, until the blogosphere resuscitated the story, breathed new life into it.
Back in December of 2009, the New York Times published a lengthy front-page story about the project and quoted the imam and Jewish leaders, city officials, all very supportive of the project. There was even an appearance on Fox News with conservative host Laura Ingraham with the imam's wife.
I like what you're trying to do, and Ms. Khan, we appreciate it.
And it was a very cordial, positive interview. There was really no major mainstream media coverage for about 5 months, but there were a few right-wing bloggers who picked up the story. One of them, the most prominent, is Pamela Geller, who was beating on this story for months. And really the turning point, I think, was when the New York Post, that's owned by Rupert Murdoch's News Corporation, picked up Geller's framing of the story. The headline was "Mosque Madness at Ground Zero." And at that point, it really blew up.
Joining us now is the executive director of Stop the Islamization of America, Pamela Geller.
The second time round, the story took hold. August is a slow news month, and the networks gave it plenty of airtime, especially Rupert Murdoch's Fox News channel.
Quickly become the biggest controversy of the summer.
The killers on 9/11 were Muslims. Now you want to build a mosque 2 blocks away.
But it wasn't just Fox.
My greatest shock, I would say, is Newsweek's cover story in which it showed the ruins of the World Trade Center, and the cover line created this visceral and emotional reaction. I think it was ill-advised. Now, I should point out that Newsweek is also owned by the same company that owns the Washington Post, but nevertheless, I was shocked personally to see it put in those terms.
Muslims have the right to...
Then President Obama waded into the media debate.
That includes the right to build a place of worship.
Obama subsequently backed off, saying building it might not be advisable.
I was not commenting, and I will not comment on the wisdom of making a decision to put a mosque there.
Then he denied backing off.
I was not endorsing any particular project. I was endorsing our Constitution.
The events of 9/11.
Right-wing voices, many of them belonging to Republican politicians, were driving the story, and the people behind the project were conspicuous in their relative silence.
I really think that the organizers dropped the ball in their PR strategy. There's been a phenomena now in the U.S. media where If you don't respond immediately to a story, other people will basically, take over.
No mosque, not here, not now, not ever.
So the story's just taken off. It's run away from them, and they've been caught flat-footed.
This mosque is right where our children died.
I feel very much that Muslims aren't quite ready for prime time in America. We are so scared oftentimes of getting out there in front of the media that we cower in the back, and people are able to then demonize very easily that way.
Anything that bothers you about this, Imam?
And for Muslims who fail to engage in the media wars, the price of that failure has serious and, some would argue, quantifiable consequences.
There can be little doubt that Islamophobia is on the rise in the United States. A Washington Post poll released last year found that nearly half of Americans, 48%, have an unfavorable view of Islam, 9 percentage points higher than in the months after the September 11 attacks.
Islam is a lie from the pit of hell.
Women are stoned to death.
The infidel must be converted or killed.
But what's more disturbing is that hate mongers and Islamophobes are having a field day because suddenly they have been receiving regular airtime on mainstream media outlets.
By building a mosque.
Anti-Muslim voices aren't just getting the airtime, they're not just driving the debate, they're framing the terms of that debate, since the media have largely adopted their term, Ground Zero Mosque, for a building project that is neither at ground zero nor a mosque.
It's not necessarily the media's job to change the terms of debate, but it is the media's job to provide context, to say, here are a few other facts you need to know about this subject in order to understand the rhetoric that is being used in an attempt to persuade you to feel a certain way.
It's also the media's job in dealing with any story to consider the source.
This blogger, Pamela Geller, she's really a fringe, far-right and very anti-Muslim blogger. She also quite famously wrote a blog post a few years ago that Barack Obama is actually the illegitimate son of Malcolm X. So I mean, this is a conspiracy theorist, a very fringe person.
But all it takes is one Rupert Murdoch-owned newspaper parroting that blogger's views, one Murdoch news network amplifying them, other news outlets jumping on the bandwagon, and an old news story with a misleading headline gets dusted off and moves to the very top of the American mainstream media's news agenda. Our Global Village voice is now on the American media and the so-called Ground Zero Mosque.
The stories have become formulaic. Show a picture of the World Trade Center falling on September 11th. Show another picture of the proximity of the site to the World Trade Center. Quote an anti-Muslim protester, toss in a line about religious freedom, and then bring up the issue of funding the site. It's so transparent, I can hardly call it manipulative.
The Ground Zero Mosque is not really at ground zero, and it's also not really a mosque, at least as far as I understand what a mosque is. But then again, I don't really understand that because I'm not a Muslim, and neither is almost anyone in the American media. So because of all this ignorance, this has become one of our more ridiculous media coverage events.
It's been well established that the phrase Ground Zero Mosque is inaccurate. However, this term is likely to continue being used by the media because it's what people are searching for in search engines. And because search engine results drive so much traffic on the web, when news outlets take the high road and decide to not use the phrase Ground Zero Mosque, their voices are no longer heard because their stories are buried in the search engines.
Time now for Listening Post News Bites. A Ugandan court has ruled against the government and in favor of journalists and human rights activists in a case considered critical for political dissent in the country. The Constitutional Court ruled that sedition will no longer be a crime in the Penal Code because it limits freedom of speech and freedom of expression. There are at least 10 journalists currently facing sedition charges in Uganda. Campaigners fighting the law claim it has been used by Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni, who's been in power for 24 years, to suppress free speech as he prepares for next year's election. The president of Argentina is going head-to-head with two of the country's leading newspapers in a spat that could have implications for press freedom there. Cristina Kirchner used a televised address to accuse Clarín and La Nación of crimes against humanity for their role in the sale of the country's only newsprint producer, Papel Prensa.
Quien controla papel prensa controla la palabra impresa. ¿Por qué?
The allegations date back to the 1970s when Papel Prensa was sold to the media companies. Kirchner claims the sale was illegal because the owners, the Gravier family, were forced to make the deal by the military junta that ruled Argentina at the time. President Kirchner and Clarín, a huge media conglomerate, have been going at it since 2008. Kirchner says Clarin's dominance of the media sector threatens Argentinian democracy. Clarín says the president is just out to silence her critics in the press. An Iranian journalist is suing a Finnish mobile phone company in an American court while still in custody in Iran. Issa Saharkis was arrested after the election last year during the government's crackdown on its critics. He claims that the phone company, Nokia, sold technology to the Iranian authorities, who used it to track him down by listening in on his phone conversations. Mr. Saharkis alleges the phone company had reason to know that the government would use the monitoring program against people like him. Nokia acknowledges that the technology has been used to suppress dissent, but also argues that the legal accountability for that should rest with those who use it, in this case the government. The company has also said that American courts have no jurisdiction in this case. Saharkis' lawyers have said that Nokia is liable under a 200-year-old American law that allows non-Americans to seek civil damages in U.S. courts. The fake sheikh has done it again. His real name is Mazir Mahmoud, and he's a reporter for the British tabloid News of the World. He's called the fake sheikh because he is known to meet the targets of his journalistic sting operations while impersonating a rich sheikh. Mahmoud is the reporter behind the cricket match-fixing scandal involving a number of Pakistani players that has rocked the sport. He pretended to be the front man for a gambling cartel from the Far East, and video footage posted by the newspaper showed him in meetings at a London hotel. Among the other victims of the reporter's stings, football coach Sven-Göran Eriksson and Sarah Ferguson, the former wife of Britain's Prince Andrew. We're back after the break with a piece on the power of the viral video. Welcome back. We're going to give you a second helping now of a story we've shown you before on the Listening Post because it's a favorite of the team here, probably because of the David versus Goliath aspect of it. The internet is a boon to advertisers. When clever ads made for the mainstream media end up going viral and showing up in your inbox, that's like free advertising for them. But the web is a double-edged sword. When the customer's not happy, that message can go viral too. And the bad publicity attached to it can damage a business. That's a lesson that an American airline, United, learned the hard way. Late in 2008, Canadian musician Dave Carroll was on tour in the U.S. and his guitar was damaged during a United flight. When Carroll's attempts to get compensated came to nothing, he decided it was time for United to face the music. His music. The Listening Post's Nick Muirhead now on a personal complaint that turned into a story about the power of viral video and how new media has changed the dynamic between businesses and their customers.
I flew United Airlines on my way to Nebraska. The plane departed Halifax, connecting in Chicago's O'Hare.
Dave Carroll is a musician. He writes folk country music, which is very much based on stories.
While on the ground, a passenger said from the seat behind me, "My God, they're throwing guitars out there."
It was a very good story of the little guy up against the big, implacable corporation, and it was very well produced.
At the action on the tarmac.
What he was complaining about was poor customer service and baggage being handled badly. Now, I don't imagine that there is an individual who's flown with any airline ever who wouldn't sympathise with that.
United, United, you broke my Taylor guitar.
It's not as if posting a video on YouTube was the first thought in Dave Carroll's mind when he collected his broken guitar that day. He did what many an upset customer has done. He got on the phone.
It took over 8 months to the point where United said that they were going to do nothing about it. They weren't going to give me any type of compensation. So I thought about it, and I thought if I were a lawyer, I might sue them, but I'm not. I'm a musician. And I thought, well, why don't I write a song about it?
I should have flown with someone else or gone by car.
I wrote them an email saying that I would do 3 songs about my experience and make videos for all 3 and put them on YouTube. My goal was to get 1 million hits in 1 year.
Carroll's first video went viral. It became an online hit and racked up millions of views in just a few days. People from around the world clicked on the link, listened to the song, and reposted it across the web.
There's a few reasons why it went viral. The first, I think, is anybody who's ever flown has had a bad experience or knows somebody that has with airlines. So the relatability issue is key. It crossed geography and cultures and languages.
The internet isn't short of angry consumers taking their frustrations online. But where many get abusive, Carroll got creative.
People have complained about customer service in the social media sphere before. They've never done it quite like this. Write a song about it, which was fun and entertaining.
It wasn't a rant, it wasn't an angry finger-pointing exercise. It was to use the best skills that he's got as a musician and an entertainer to get the message out to a wide audience.
And there was one more crucial factor in this story.
All of the social media campaigns that I've come across that have been very successful have a platform to actually make that stick. And what really takes it from being a social media campaign into a campaign is when traditional media get involved.
Which is exactly what the mainstream media did with the story. They told it.
A Canadian country singer we're talking about, a guy called Dave Carroll.
And that led to even more interest online. But there's more to this new dynamic than just getting a complaint heard. Consumers are now able to actively communicate with companies and their customers through social media about every aspect of their business.
Social media now means that everybody has a voice and that you can get a message out to millions of people very quickly for almost no cost. So big corporations need to be aware of that now.
It's clearly the most important change in the way companies and citizens can actually communicate. And I think the balance of power has shifted quite considerably.
Situations can pick up steam very quickly. They can have a fervor and sort of get a life of their own and can live on forever, can exist in search results when people are looking about your organization.
Internet hazards come in all shapes and forms, but there's one infamous example that has cemented itself online. Food companies don't come much bigger than the American franchise, Domino's Pizzas Incorporated, but even they couldn't escape an online PR disaster.
And here at Domino's, I like to be lazy.
A few rogue employees produced a film which they posted on YouTube about their antics in the kitchen, doing unspeakable things with the food.
The video went viral, and again, it wasn't long before the mainstream media picked up the story.
Fair warning, many of you might find the video a little distasteful.
But there was a fundamental difference in how Domino's responded to this highly volatile situation compared to United.
The Domino's team, right up to the president, responded very, very quickly. They produced their own video, which they posted online.
We sincerely apologize for this incident.
It was an absolutely genuine response to a very damaging reputational challenge for them.
And they didn't stop there. The company has kept up their social media momentum and released this video. Company employees, from top to bottom, dealt with complaints they'd received online in a constructive and creative way. They posted the video on YouTube, and that too went viral.
It shows how a company can actually turn a negative, bad feedback from customers about the quality of the product into a very positive way of showing how the company is changing and listening to feedback.
Baby on your side.
But some social media mishaps are of a corporation's own doing. Take this viral campaign for Motrin painkillers that targeted new mothers suffering from back pains.
But what about me? Do moms that wear their babies cry more than those who don't? I sure do.
The problem was that they completely misjudged their market. Mothers objected to the insinuation that their babies were fashion statements and that they needed painkillers to carry them. It wasn't long before the makers of Motrin apologized and pulled the ad.
The old saying that you don't pick a fight with somebody who buys ink by the gallon, you know, that it's that only amplified.
Dave Carroll's online campaign grew so loud that United Airlines did offer to replace his guitar. But by that stage, his music career had taken off, so it was no longer about getting compensation.
Now I'm done being mad at United.
But rather getting a message out about the power of social media.
there was a fellow that was flying at JFK, and he passed a United plane, and somebody started singing United Breaks Guitars, and the whole shuttle erupted into a chorus of United Breaks Guitars. And so he came away from that, and he wrote in his blog that it was the greatest example of a market of one ever. But I think it's more correct to say that the market of one is all of us, and that there are no statistically insignificant parts.
Businesses have no choice but to embrace social media, and they have to get it right, because I think, looking at the example of Dave Carroll, you never know just how influential that single customer could be.
More Global Village Voices now on viral videos.
I think that big companies are playing catch up when it comes to new media and new social media and the challenges that they present. They're still trying to find an advertising model that works on the internet, and they're still trying to find ways to grab people's attention while competing with so much free content out there.
Social videos are both expressions and causes of optimism. Yes, we can rattle the corporate cages. Yes, we can make them hear us. Yes, we can win PR battles. We'll mostly lose, but every video posted is a dose of digital hope.
Finally, more from the viral world of the web. There's a weekly competition on the web to find what they call the best ADA sport team. Teams of animators post their creations on YouTube, and whoever gets the most hits wins. We don't know what they win, we just like what they post. You know that Apple ad campaign that has Mac users saying how much cooler they are than PC users? Well, now a team called ADA Spartans took that campaign, threw in a couple of American presidents, and presto, they produced our web video of the week. We'll see you next time at the Listening Post.
Hello there, I'm a Mac.
I'm a PC.
Hey, PC, you all right?
No, I'm not all right. And I've got the exhaustification for mortifications and the ways I can't compete with you.
Oh, GW, why not? It's so much fun.
What the? Fun? What you mean fun?
Look. Bam. What?
What the? What's all that?
Well, something I learned on the south side.
What's going on?
West side.
Wait a minute.
Take that back to Texas with you there. And bringing it back up through Chicago. Health care and health care.
I can do that. Well, wait a minute, I can't do that.
And Billie Jean is not my lover.
It's so bewitching.
She's just a girl who claims that I am the one.
Your moves.
A little something for you, barbecuing it. Bam, spices and herbs and spices and herbs.
Hypnotizification of me.
Sammy Davis taught me this one. Choke, 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 a choke.
Oh, man, you're messing with me there, Obama.
Break it down, and wait for it. Wait for it. And bam, it just got served.
Oh, Mac, you win.